Welcome. Here is an overview for the 511 quiz that you'll see as you're working through Unit 5, and this is also the final test on feedback loops. We've been learning about feedback loops throughout this trimester, and so this is our final check-in to see if you're really grasping these concepts, if you feel okay kind of working through what positive and negative feedback are. So I put three types here. There's really four types of questions. The first one is a definition question. So there are two questions. One asks for the definition of positive feedback. One asks for the definition of negative feedback. And so let's review those definitions here. Positive feedback is the type of system, or in this case, we're looking at positive feedback loops that increase the effect of a change and they produce instability. So when you see a statement about a positive feedback loop, it might start with saying temperature warms. It's going to end with the same thing. Temperature is going to continue warming. So positive feedback loops increase the effect of the change and they produce instability in the system. Negative feedback loops are not negative, they're not bad, they are things that provide balance. So a negative feedback loop reduces the effect of change and helps maintain balance. In the second type of question, you will be looking at examples. So let's look down here at two examples. You'll have one for positive and one for negative. So this is a scenario where we're looking at a bank account. So not earth science related, but it still shows us that positive and negative feedbacks can kind of happen all throughout our world in different instances. So here we put money into our bank account and it causes that bank account to grow. When that happens, it makes us earn more interest. When you earn more interest, your account balance grows. And so this is producing more of the same effect. So the starting effect is the account balance grows and it causes it to continue growing. Does that sound like an example of positive or negative feedback? If you said positive, you are correct. This is an example of positive feedback. It's causing an instability. In this case, it's a good instability. You want your bank account to continue growing. That would be a good thing. And that's an example of positive feedback, but it doesn't have to be a good thing. It could be something where, maybe you get account fees and that causes your the fees take away from your account, and that means you have a lower balance. So you start to get more fees and your balance keeps dropping. So you can sort of have the same type of system. That instability is the thing that we look for when we look at positive feedback. Let's look down here at this example. It says the body temperature rises. So maybe you do something like you go out for a run or you start doing some burpees and your body temperature rises. That causes the body to sweat, and sweating cools you off, so your body temperature drops. So in this case, we have a system that is regulating or balancing itself out. We do some action that causes one thing, and the body reacts and causes the temperature to come back to normal. So this is an example of what? If you said negative feedback, you are correct. So here is an example of negative feedback. So we've gotten through the first type of question, definition. We've got through the second type, identifying examples. The third type, so the 3 and 4 really are explanation problems. In the third one, you will be asked to explain how feedback impacts the Earth's climate. So you're given a scenario and you just give your opinion, basically, of how positive and negative feedbacks can change the Earth's climate. The fourth type of question is to make a sketch of a feedback loop based on a description. So I'm going to give you an example of that. These are actually the examples that you will see in the problem. So there are 6 questions in this feedback loop test. So 2 about the definitions, 2 about identifying examples, 1 where you talk about how feedback affects Earth's climate, and then 1 question here where you need to kind of sketch out an example. So let's read it together. Select one of the following scenarios and using the whiteboard, and you're going to be taking this quiz in GoFormative, so you can use that whiteboard feature that's built in. Make a diagram to show the feedback pattern that is described. Be sure to indicate if it is an example of positive or negative feedback. Simple sketches are great, or you are welcome to use clip art in your diagram. So you can make your sketch however you would like. It can be super sophisticated. It can be super simple. The idea here is we want to see, can you take the words and kind of break them down into a diagram. That's a really important thing in kind of all science classes. Can you take a description and diagram out what that looks like? So here we are, and I'm going to focus in on example 1 about clouds, but there's another about precipitation, one about greening in the forest, so the change in the green plants that live there, and then also ice albedo. We spoke about ice albedo in our Unit 5 lessons already. Okay, so let's take a look at the specific example of clouds. And I have my diagram here, but I'll kind of walk you through how I drew it out as I was reading the paragraph. It says clouds have an enormous impact on Earth's climate, reflecting about 1/3 of the total amount of sunlight that hits the Earth's atmosphere back into space. So what I did was I drew a sketch of the sun, I drew a cloud, and 1/3, so here's 1, 2, 3 kind of sun rays reaching the Earth, but 1/3 of those, so 1 out of 3, bounces back because it hits the cloud. Okay, so I'm just sketching what I see. I'm not kind of doing any extra interpretation. I'm just sketching what is told to us. So in that first sentence, I was able to sketch this part of the diagram. Continuing on, it says, even small changes in cloud amount, location, and type could have large consequences. A warmer climate could cause more water to be held in the atmosphere. So here I have increasing temperature. That would be a warmer climate. Could cause more water to be held in the atmosphere. So increasing temperature means that more water is going to evaporate from things like streams, rivers, lakes, or oceans. So more evaporation, it says, leads to an increase in cloudiness and alters the amount of sunlight that reaches the surface of the Earth. So I've made more clouds here. Here is our increase in clouds due to that evaporation. And it means the amount of sunlight is going to be altered that reaches the Earth. So now instead of 1/3 of those rays bouncing back, now I have something like 2/3 of the rays bouncing back. You don't need, it doesn't give you mathematical information, so you don't need mathematical information, but I'm just showing here that more of the sun's rays are bouncing back than they did over here when there were less clouds. Then it says less heat would get absorbed, which could slow the increased warming. So Earth's warming slows. So when there's less sunlight reaching Earth, it doesn't get as warm as quickly. This is an example of negative feedback because here we had an effect. The temperature on the Earth was warming. It caused something to happen that slowed that effect. So instead of creating instability, we have something that's creating a balance. So this would be an example of negative feedback. And if you specify that, you would get full credit for this question. Here's another example of positive feedback. I know that can be a tricky one. So we start here with the change, and the change is temperature warming. When temperature is warm, it causes ice in the oceans to melt. So sea ice melts and shrinks. When you have less ice, it means the ocean can absorb more of the solar radiation, more energy from the sun, because the reflective sea ice is gone. Oceans can absorb more because they're darker in color than the bright white ice is. So that causes the temperatures to warm further, which makes more of the sea ice melt, which makes the temperatures warm even more. And you can see that this is a positive, unstable situation where the temperature is going to continue to increase and increase. I'm going to do one last review here to kind of compare and contrast positive feedbacks when we look at global warming, create a change. So whether that's the temperature warming like it has here or something else, and that causes a reaction of events that continue to speed the warming. And so we stay in this cycle. In the other case, global warming in a negative feedback system creates a change. So the temperature warms, but it causes something to happen that slows down that warming. And that brings us back to a more balanced or stable system. That's all the information that you need to answer the questions in that Go Formative assessment. It looks like this here. So this is a preview. You've got, like I said, 6 questions, 2 definition questions, 2 examples that you'll need to identify as positive or negative. Question 5 will ask you to explain how feedbacks impact the Earth's climate. And the 4th type of question is where you make a sketch based on one of those 4 descriptions. You can choose whichever one you would like. You take that quiz along with Unit 5, Lesson 11. It will direct you to go to the Go Formative to do it. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm here to help. Keep up the great work.